Good afternoon. This is Tim Selden, president of the Montessori Foundation. And with me is Dr. Anita Amos and her husband and co-founder of Montessori Compass, Rob Amos.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Hi.
We are beginning the second iteration of a 5-part, 2-hour webinar series. Every 10 hours of professional development at our local Sarasota Technical Institute counts as a United States Continuing Education Unit, or CEU. You do not need to attend all of them, but if you do choose to register for all 10, and if you either participate live or if you're listening to this by recording and follow the instructions, it will be fine for you to apply for anything from 1/5 of a continuing education unit to a full continuing education unit. I should add that even though we're going over the same content, this time around, there will be new aspects to the course that would make this suitable for someone who wanted to do sort of a level 2. So we're going to try to accommodate the needs and interests of a wide range of people, school administrators, teachers who are already familiar with Montessori Compass and have been using it for some time. They're trying to understand the new features and new scope and sequence that's been incorporated into it. People who have never done online record keeping at all. So I should also tell you as we get started that we will probably not be having you speak out loud except for 1 or 2 cases if we sense there's time. You're all muted automatically, and that's to prevent an echo effect throughout the 100+ people who are participating from around the world as we speak. This conference is being recorded. Later tonight, I will convert it and I will upload it and I will send everybody an email probably tomorrow letting you know where you can listen to that webinar. As each new webinar comes along, you'll need to register for each one separately. That's because each webinar creates an individual login for each individual person. We can tell whether or not you participated, but what's important is that if you've registered, then you will get the email where the links are and you will be able to receive information about future webinars. Somebody will be able to sign up for the first time later. That's not a problem. So that's basically the way this works. We will take the periodic break to let you get up and stretch and get a drink of tea or coffee or water. But it is a rigorous 2 hours. So I hope you're in for the long haul and you're ready for a good ride. Nita, if you'll move on, we're going to be doing 5 of these things. This particular one is navigating scope and sequence and learning how to do basic information. We'd like to begin by just talking about what we're going to accomplish during this session. The first is I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about the collaboration between the Montessori Foundation and Montessori Compass and how this came to be. The second is we're going to talk about the scope and sequence, how it's organized, the philosophy and the design and the structure of organization. Then we're going to begin to look at the specifics about how to use the scope and sequence within Montessori Compass for lesson planning and for record keeping. Then we're going to introduce you to the National Common Core State Standards, is the actual formal term used in the United States. Some of you are from other countries. That isn't as important to you, but what might be is this. In the same way that we've aligned the scope and sequence to the new United States Common Core Standards, you could conceivably align it to your national curriculum. Most of the national curriculums will sooner or later, and the odds are sooner, align themselves to the U.S. Common Core. So if that's true, and you can provide us with an alignment that might be provided to you from your government, of how your national curriculum aligns to the U.S. Common Core standards, then it makes it much easier for Rob and Anita to do that for you. Um, we'll talk about the philosophy and design, structure and organization, and I'll kibitz a little bit about my own feelings about national curriculums and how we preserve the integrity of Montessori. And then finally, we're going to look today at how one would begin to modify or customize the curriculum if you wanted to. That could range from anything from changing the wording to reflect terms that you're more used to, adding something, or archiving a lesson that you feel is not part of your tradition and you would just assume your teachers not even be able to see. So that's what we're going to cover in the next 2 hours. Well, we'll make this particular session the first of five very different, is we're actually going to lead you into Montessori Compass live in real time, where you're doing it yourself as well as watching and listening to us. So we're looking forward to it. Now, I want you to notice a couple of things before we go any further. There's a panel on the right side of your screen. It probably has light blue, and some of the little areas are perhaps closed because they have those horizontal arrows, and then if you touch it with your cursor, it'll drop down and you'll be able to see something. Um, among other things, you can see the attendee list, who's online at the moment. You'll be able to see an area called questions. I'm seeing that the first questions are being asked. Somebody asked, was the class canceled? That was Bodil Erickson. I'm hoping that Bodil is still there. I see you are. I apologize. We were having computer trouble and I had to restart to get it to work. Um, I see another couple of quick things. Marcy has said, my goodness, we have lots of people from the Children's Tree Montessori School. They've decided to do this all together. So we have a whole school out there. And Bodil has just confirmed, yes, you are there. Thank you so much. So onward, upward, as you can see, you can communicate. Now, when I'm not talking, my role as the organizer is to monitor the questions in the chat. And I'll periodically either interrupt whoever is speaking or I will respond myself first chance I can. So it's possible that there will be questions you'll ask or comments you'll make that we may not get to right away. All of this is being stored. And at the end of this meeting, I will be downloading all of it for Rob, for Anita, and myself. And among other things, if there are questions we feel we didn't answer well enough, we'll be responding to you individually because, again, we can see who's asked it. There'll be some cases where I'll respond on behalf of Rob and Anita for the entire group. So there we are. Nita, I think we move on to the next slide. So the collaboration between the Montessori Foundation and Montessori Compass. I don't know how many of you were able to join us at the Montessori Congress in Portland for the last 5 days. That was an amazing experience. Among other things, many of us had an opportunity to talk face to face, either Rob and Anita and I with you all together, or talking to one of us at a time. People were asking me quite often, what exactly are you doing over there as the head of a foundation, standing with somebody who's basically got this computer software? The answer is this software, while we ourselves are not stockholders in the company, we feel a real proprietary interest in this. This is a company that was developed by two wonderful Montessori parents of 4 kids who were trying to solve a problem. They wanted to understand what was going on in their kids' education. And they felt that the way the schools were communicating with them at that point wasn't giving them a lot of information. From our end at the Montessori Foundation, we felt for years that Montessori teachers generally assume that because we buy the same things and put them on the shelves, that somehow or another parents ought to understand what we're doing with their children all day. We don't send home very much to communicate with parents. And our record keeping tends to be essentially a simplistic checklist of a couple of hundred lists of lessons, the pink tower, the first color box, the first drawer of the geometry cabinet. That's not the same thing as a behavioral objective, the actual elements of a Montessori curriculum scope and sequence. Now, there's a lot more to a curriculum than just a scope and sequence, but all curricula will normally include a concept of the scope of what's going to be covered and the sequence of how it will normally be presented. And typically, it's all presented in language that has to do with something that you can understand, something that any reasonable person ought to be able to say, okay, I understand. I can tell when Tim's teaching this lesson to somebody. I don't have to be a Montessori educator. More importantly, if I taught my little dog Bikram a lesson, we ought to be able to see whether he actually can do it. Um, so while Bikram is not going to get on stage right at the moment and show you that he can build the pink tower with his little teeth, if we were measuring, we would hopefully be able to see Bikram prove to us he actually knows how to do it. We do that with Montessori all the time. We ask children to show us, to explain how they got the answer, or to give the lesson to another child. In our questioning and our observing, in asking them to present to other children, we are testing them every day. What we felt we needed, and we did this many, many years ago, literally 20 some years ago, we began this. Um, we felt that it needed to be organized like public school curriculum with a big exception. We don't think of curriculum as following on day one, on day two, on day three, and everyone's going to do the same thing at the same time. In our world, we may have a plan, but some children come into us and they're already much further on the journey than we thought they would be. We certainly don't make them go back and redo what they've already know. And in the same way, other children move much more quickly than we predict. And we certainly don't hold them back because they're capable of moving on. The beauty of Montessori is its ability to allow children to move at their own pace. So our collaboration really began with the Montessori Foundation being approached by Montessori Compass, Rob and Anita Amos, saying, we really think that there's a need out there for something sophisticated and at the same time much more user friendly and something that can be used on the fly on all kinds of devices. And at the same time, we're looking for a really robust scope and sequence that could be used by researchers or by any really sophisticated school to say, okay, what exactly is being taught by this material? And what are all the different things that really do it? So instead of a couple of hundred lines of lessons, we have thousands of lines. And some people think that's too much. Other people think it's not even enough. We think it really covers the base. We've been in collaboration with Montessori Compass now for about 2 years. And in April, Rob and Anita asked if we would be willing to allow them to incorporate the scope and sequence into Montessori Compass as a default curriculum. They did that, and then Anita, who is really an incredibly talented lady herself, with lots of background in school leadership and school curriculum design, and her team began to look more and more deeply to make sure that nothing had been missed. And guess what? They found stuff that we had forgotten. And so they started filling in the little areas that were missing, and the little areas that she's added are not inconsiderable. So we would typically put it that this is not one organization's product at this point. It's evolved together by a real collaboration between Rob and Anita Amos and their team and the staff of the Montessori Foundation over an extended period of time. So that's why we're so proud of this. It's something we've done together. Nita, you can move on. And I think this is where you pick up.
Hi, yes, Tim, it is. Thank you so much for those kind words. And actually, I probably should have advanced to the slide just a little bit earlier because you did speak to the philosophy and the design behind the scope and sequence in terms of um, not just defining a checklist of lessons, but taking it further and defining those sort of objectives that are being achieved with the lessons. And this is just an example of sandpaper letters here. And it's a screenshot. Here you can see a parent-friendly description and a photograph of the material that parents get on a report. And then these are the measurable objectives that are available to the educators in the classroom to get more specific as they document this specific lesson. And I'll be showing you this in the system in a moment as well. Um, Actually, we're going to go ahead and discuss a little bit now of the nuts and bolts of the scope and sequence and the structure and organization within Montessori Compass. Just one second. Okay, so here I am logged in as an administrator in a demo account. And if I click on the curriculum icon from the top navigation, I can see lessons listed here. From category infant is actually the only one that's on it as a separate subcategory of curriculum. Other than that, the toddler through age 12 for the Montessori curriculum
Hey,
is
Nita,
available.
I'm
Yes?
going to interrupt for just a second. I'm having a number of people saying that they're having a hard time hearing you.
Okay, let me see what I can do about that.
I
Um,
think, if anything, I'm probably was speaking too loud because I was afraid that my mic wasn't adjusted loudly enough. And you adjust yours, and then
okay,
we'll just see if folks. All right, say a
is
few
this
words, and
better?
let's see from some of you if Anita is now more clearly being heard.
Okay, go ahead. I've adjusted my mic a bit. Hopefully I can speak up and hopefully it's easier to hear me now.
Certainly, you're louder for me.
Okay. Are you getting any other feedback?
I am. Trish Nickerson is saying that you're much more clear now.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Um, well, what we are looking at here is the actual scope and sequence in the system, divided up into individual academic categories. And then you can see for each academic category how many subcategories and then how many total lessons. This itself can be filtered according to actual classrooms. So if I were to select the primary room, all of the numbers here would adjust to reflect only the lessons that have been tagged for a cycle that is included in the primary room, a cycle year, or upper elementary, or I can actually select an individual cycle year and see only the lessons that have been designated to that cycle year. And I'll show you what it means to be designated. The way we design the system is that one academic category, such as mathematics, can hold lessons from toddler really through grade 12, through 12th grade. Um, and it gets designated for where it appears in the system at the lesson level. So let's go ahead and click on the category for mathematics. And here we see subcategories listed in sequence all the way through to, I think, coordinate geometry. The coordinate plane is the final lessons that are designated for age 12 in the system right now. But it can hold additional year cycles. So if I open a subcategory, I see individual lessons listed inside, and it is here at the lesson level that specific cycle years are designated for individual lessons. And you can see when you click on a lesson, you see a parent-friendly description and a photograph, as well as the individual elements that have the measurable objectives that have been defined for this particular lesson. Now, there's some interesting kind of features that came out, as Tim mentioned, during the process of collaborating with the foundation and mapping out the alignment between the scope and sequence and the Common Core state standards. There were a number of insights that came out of the project and features that we were able to incorporate to make the scope and sequence very robust and a very valuable resource for educators. One of the insights is the scope and sequence, the Common Core state standards have been written from a standpoint that providing concrete experiences to students is very important. As we already know, and it seems like it would be obvious, the new standards actually state the measurable objectives in terms of having concrete objects. So as you can imagine, let me go ahead and give an example here. I'm going to go ahead and go to the standards tab. There's many, many, many opportunities. Pretty much everything that you're doing in a primary classroom dealing with mathematics is giving your students an opportunity to experience those quantities in a hands-on fashion. So I'm going to give you an example here. This is right here is taken straight from the Common Core state standards. This is the language. And in kindergarten, students need to count to tell the number of objects. So for example, understanding the relationship between numbers and quantities. So we've gone ahead and aligned all of these measurable objectives from the scope and sequence that relate to this standard. So anytime a Montessori educator in the classroom documents a lesson, such as red and blue number rods, or working with associating numeral to quantity with golden beads and number cards, and so on, it's meeting the standard that's listed here. So one of the insights that we came to is that, first of all, over and over and over again, the Montessori scope and sequence not only meets but greatly exceeds what's been laid out in the Common Core state standards. And in places where there could be some areas actually added or more robust, we did that in concert with the Montessori Foundation. So for example, in areas of estimating numbers or in rounding numbers, sometimes additional lessons were added to the scope and sequence to address those concepts. In addition, one of the nice things that we were able to do with the process of mapping out the scope and sequence was in the area of writing. And here I'll go ahead and give an example of persuasive writing. Let's say for a lower elementary classroom, where perhaps you ask your students to write an opinion essay, to state their own opinion on a topic and provide evidence to support their ideas. Well, when you go to assess that piece of writing, we provide educators with an assessment rubric. So in this situation, we're still using the elements as measurable objectives, but we're able to provide our users with kind of an increasing level of sophistication for a list of measurable objectives to help you get more precise in evaluating a student's piece of writing. So for example, did they provide a clear introduction of the topic, state and support that opinion with multiple reasons that are clearly linked, and provide a conclusion statement, and so on.
Nita, can you speak up a little bit louder again?
Sure, I'm sorry. I guess I need to really kind of shout a little bit. I apologize if it's been frustrating for attendees. I thought I was speaking up a fair amount. Can you hear me okay now? Okay.
Sorry, Anita, I had myself muted so that I wouldn't.
To go ahead. Okay, I understand. I understand. So I wanted to go ahead. Let's go ahead and go back to the presentation for a moment. and discuss some of the tools that we have in Montessori Compass for utilizing the scope and sequence, all of these lessons, all of these measurable objectives, for lesson ideas and lesson planning, and really kind of how are you putting this curriculum into practical implementation in the classroom. So for documenting what you see. So there's two main tools. We have a lesson ideas tool and a lesson plans tool. The main difference between these two is that with a lesson idea, you don't need to choose a date. It's simply an academic goal. It's a lesson that you know that you want to work on with one of your students or with a group of your students, but you don't want to actually set a date. It works really well in a Montessori classroom. Now, the lesson plan tool is when you do want to choose a date. You can plan a lesson a week in advance, 2 weeks in advance if you're planning group lessons, and it will remind you. The system will remind you with everything that you need in terms of what lessons were, what students were tagged, and if you made any notes for what materials you might need. We have places for that. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at specifically the lesson ideas tool, and then we're going to lead into our first opportunity in this session for you to go ahead and log in and try out the tool and see how it works for you. Now, actually, before I go back into the system, I want to mention this lesson ideas tool. You can actually utilize it from 3 different places in the system. The commonality, though, is that to add a lesson to a lesson idea list, you need to turn on the light bulbs that you see next to a lesson by just clicking on it. So you can add a lesson to an individual student's lesson idea list from within their profile. You can open it up, the records, I'll show you this in a second. Identify that you might want a student to work on the cylinder blocks. You're not sure when they want to do, you're going to have them do that, but you know at some point that's where they should be progressing, or that's where you're going to start, and you turn on that light bulb. You can use something we call the skill levels tool. This is actually pretty cool, where you can choose any lesson in your curriculum, anything at all. Maybe you're rounding out the first month of school and you want to see how many students have had the pink tower presented. You could actually just select pink tower and it will show you all of your students and all of the levels of assessment that have been documented for them. And as long as they haven't mastered the lesson, you can turn on the light bulb to add it to their lesson ideas list. And the third way is really nice, particularly in a lower upper elementary classroom, but also in primary, is when you're planning a student lesson and it's a group lesson, and maybe you planned it last week for Monday, for today, and it's time to give that lesson and send it to record keeping. Well, if a couple of students are absent, there'll be a little reminder for you. It'll tell you the student's absent and there's a light bulb. So you can add that lesson to their the idea list and not have to remember or forget or wonder why in the future the student didn't get this presentation when you were sure that you had given it. So we build in a tool there. We really try to take the mindset of the fact that as Montessori educators, you're busy, you're juggling a lot. You are charting individual learning paths for all of these students without the usage of standard test-based metrics. You're using authentic assessment and relying on your observations, and keeping track of everything and all those pieces of paper is challenging. It just is. So we've tried to build in tools like this to help in that path, in that process. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to walk you through these 3 different ways of adding lesson ideas and viewing the lesson ideas, and then you're going to go ahead and log in and do this yourself. So there's 2 ways for viewing them. Okay, so the first way that we mentioned is from within an individual student's profile. So I can go right into a student's profile, click on the Records tab, and then choose any subcategory. Let's go ahead and choose Practical Life. And I can see how she's doing in each of the subcategories. And here's sweeping. let's say I want to add that to her idea list. I simply click on the light bulb, and now it's been added to her lesson idea list. That's one way to do this. Another way is to go to the curriculum lesson plans and go to skill levels tab and choose any lesson. I can filter by classroom first. Otherwise, it'll show me all the students in the school. And now I can choose a lesson. Let's go ahead and choose sweeping again. And that will list all of my students' last highest level documented. This is actually very good for adding a lesson to multiple students' lesson ideas list pretty easily. You say, oh, wow, everybody needs to work on sweeping. And that goes to everyone's ideas list now. And you can search for any lesson here. The other way to do this, to add a lesson to a student's lesson idea list, is from the dashboard. So first I'm going to check. Today we have 2 planned lessons with 12 students tagged in all. I'm going to go back and make Avery absent so you can see how this works. So let me go to the attendance tab. Everyone's present. I tap to make her absent. I can choose an explanation if I want to. Those are fully customizable, or add a note. But let's go ahead and go back here. Send this to record keeping. And what I see here is that she's absent. I can either plan it, make a lesson plan and choose a date right now, or simply add it to her lesson idea list by clicking on that light bulb. So you're saying, great, you can add all these things to the lesson ideas list from multiple different places, but how do you view that lesson ideas list? How is that actually useful? Well, there's 2 main ways to do it. One of them is from right here within the classroom observations. Every student who's present today has a student card, and they have a link called Ideas. And anything you've added to their idea list is easily available for you to view right here. And you can imagine how useful this can be in a primary room in particular, when you are observing your students in the independent work time, and perhaps Juliana's not really sure what she wants to do next, or Dylan has been spending a lot of time looking at books in the library, and you might want to guide him to see what he has, what are the ideas, if you want to guide him to do something else, or Juliana's asking, what do I do next? Instead of shuffling through paper or trying to remember, you can easily just click here and see what are the ideas that I've designated for my student in the individual areas of the classroom. And it can really help with that process of guiding them on their own individual learning path. So that's one place to see the ideas. The other place is right from within the student's records. This is telling me that I've entered data that may not be saved. So I'm going to hit stay on the page. We make it really difficult to lose any of your data. Everything's auto-saved. And if it hasn't saved quite yet, a big flag like you just saw comes up and says, hold on a second. So let's go into a student's profile to see where else you can view those lesson plans. I'm going to go ahead and lesson ideas, excuse me, click on lower elementary in order to demonstrate another way this can be used. And that is, you can create your students' kind of a weekly work plan where you define academic goals with the student by adding lessons to their idea page. You can imagine how you could look at the records page, choose some lessons, and then add it to their idea page, and you can see that here. You can print the lesson for them. You might not have this many lessons. We were using this site in Portland at the Congress recently, so this student has a lot of lesson ideas. But then what's very nice is when it's time to record the lessons at the end of the week, maybe Carly comes up in their lower elementary classroom and you're ready to now document what she's achieved that week, or what she's completed, the progress towards the academic goals that she defined along with you. You can do that by clicking the record keeping tab, and it stays right here within Carly's window, so she's not seeing anything else. So she really could be next to you. And you could choose, well, what day did you complete this work? You did this on Monday or Tuesday. You can do an assessment of the work right here as well, or record an assessment of the work and be complete with the work right there. This is also, if I can find an example, where we would have, here's the opinion essay, where you could choose an assessment of the piece of writing built in right here as well. And choose the date and assessment level and any comments. So there's two main places where you're viewing the lesson ideas from within the actual student's profile or on the dashboard. And just to point out, the lesson ideas list is over here under the More tab. So now I'm going to invite each of you to go ahead and log into the system to try, to see what it's like to go ahead and create some lesson ideas and view those lesson ideas, and to see how you might want to use that depending on if you're a primary room teacher or lower L or upper L, and get a sense for how that feels to add it from multiple places in the system. To do that, first of all, let me go ahead and mention one thing. You may or may not want to do this first. We have here on our marketing, the website, our main page website, the MontessoriCompass.com. If you go to contact webinar series, this is how you may have registered for the series. If you scroll down, we have a click here to download a handout for this session. So if I click right here, you may want to do this now, you may want to do this after the session. This includes step-by-step instructions for implementing the strategies that we're covering during this webinar. So right now, during this time period, you're going to be using the individual steps listed right here. You can choose one of these to add a lesson and to view, and it's all listed out right here very conveniently. You're going to actually go to our, go to MontessoriCompass.com, click the login page, except I'm already logged in. That won't happen when you do it. And when you do click the login page, depending on your last name, you can see the ranges here. You're going to choose primary 1 at MontessoriCompass.com, or 2 or 3 or 4, and then you're going to simply use the word password. That'll take you right into the system attached to a primary classroom, and you can go ahead and see what it's like. Click on a student's name, go into their records, add some lessons to the lesson ideas list for that student, or go into the curriculum and look at the skill levels tab and find a lesson. Look at Red Raw, choose any lesson, and you can go ahead and add a lesson idea from there. Or you can go into, this one's a little bit trickier, planning a lesson and then seeing who's absent and adding it from that one. You may not want to do that one. And then see what it's like to view it. Go to the dashboard and click on the Classroom Observations tab and view those ideas you added for your student. Or go right into the student's profile and select their Lesson Ideas tab. Tim, you can go ahead and ask if there's any questions at this point, but right now we're going to go ahead and let you.
I think that's a good idea to see if there are any questions, but I can tell you, Anita, that at the moment, everyone seems to be content, and I'll monitor in case anyone comes up with any questions. By the way, I just want to draw everyone's attention to the fact that the few people asked questions that I answered, and I sent them out to everyone. So if you look under your questions tab, those of you who didn't notice it may discover that there were some basic questions that some people asked that I've answered altogether. So I'm going to mute myself again, Anita, unless something major comes up, and I'll let you carry forward.
Okay. Well, I'm in the MC demo school where people would be logging into. It looks like primary room 2 has had some lesson ideas added for them. So some individuals with the last name between E and L. I'm not seeing them added elsewhere yet. Whoops, excuse me. Let's see here. Apologize for the, hope you're not getting dizzy. If anybody else is adding any lesson ideas yet. It looks like we might have some students marked as absent. Oh no, Mason has pink eye. Yikes, and somebody else is tardy. um, whoops. No lesson ideas yet for classroom 1, classroom 3, classroom 4. Okay, well, it might be that some of you are going, I hope there isn't trouble logging in, but it might be that some of you might be, you're going to practice this later outside the scope of this webinar, or just maybe you have your own account already. We do have people in
Anita,
attending that have their account. Sure.
Anita, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm seeing from a few people that they're having a little trouble. Laurie Gist is asking, please give instructions again. I'm not able to log into the work page. So let's go back
Oh,
over the basics.
yes. I apologize. Um, if you go to montessoricompass.com and click the login link from the top menu, and the username will be one of these 4 email addresses, depending on the first letter of your last name, and the password will be the word password. I apologize for that. I'm not sure I actually went over that enough. So kudos to those of you who did log in, because I'm not sure I went over that as well as I should have. So if you log in with those credentials, it will take you right into that demo school
So
attached to a classroom.
Anita, we're
Mhm.
still getting people saying that they're confused and they can't get in. Um,
Okay, I'm going to go
all
ahead
right,
and I'll walk through the actual steps more concretely.
I think that
Um,
might be worthwhile.
Absolutely, I'm happy to do that. Just 1 second. Alrighty, so here I am at montessoricompass.com, and I'm going to click this login link right up here on the main menu. And then I'm going to log in with one of the listed email addresses. So primary, either 1, 2, 3, or 4 at montessoricompass.com. And then I'm just going to type in the word password. No capitalization or anything, all lowercase, password, and then log in. And that takes me right into the demo school. And I can see somebody is already planning lessons. That's fabulous for the student. Now, the main ways to add ideas would be to go into students and go into a student's records. The ages appear off. Ignore those, please. This demo site had lower and upper elementary, but for the sake of this demo, I've adjusted everything to be primary. Now you can go into a student's records and choose any lesson that you may want to add to the ideas list by simply clicking on the light bulbs. And then also going into the curriculum, clicking on that skill levels tab, choosing a lesson, and adding it there if you'd like to. And then viewing those lesson ideas by going to the dashboard and clicking on classroom observations and seeing your students' ideas lists.
Anita, just so you know, Nisha Gupta has asked if we can also give them access to an upper elementary account.
For the upper elementary account, let me see here. Sure, maybe that would have been another way to do it. Hold on 1 second. It looks like primary 1 used to be. So if I went to classrooms 1 and I edited it, what I might do for is go ahead and add an additional couple cycle years. Let's remove it. So now if you were to log into primary 1 at montessoricompass.com, the records that would show up for your students are going to be first, second, and third. You are not authorized to access this page. Hold on a second. Hopefully most of you have figured out how to go ahead and log into the system. And because some of you may have added lessons already, I'm going to go ahead, as I said before, and just add the lower elementary classroom to primary 1. So if you're particularly interested in utilizing the elementary, you may want to log in with primary 1 at montessoricompass.com. The reason I say that is because the way the system works is if you log in as a teacher, you see the classrooms that you're attached to. So the primary 1 at montessoricompass.com username is attached to the primary 1 classroom. And now I can go ahead. I also, oh, this is a nice view as well. In terms of, I forgot to mention, seeing how many planned lessons. So somebody is adding planned lessons. You guys are doing a great job in primary 1. And look at all of these lesson ideas that have been added for Mason. Oh, wow. In primary 2, we've got a lot of stuff happening as well, with people adding lesson ideas, planning lessons. This is great. And even more in primary 3. So I guess it was good to review logging in. Everyone's really being active now. Oh, except for those end of the alphabet last names. You guys in primary 4 I've added a couple of lesson ideas. All right. Tim, I'm not sure how long, if you can judge by questions, we want to, until we want to move on or give everybody a little bit of a break. Maybe they're taking a break right now, stretching, getting a cup of tea.
I'm seeing one question, Anita. Somebody is saying, after login, what is the email I should type there? And I assume it's just one of those 4 right at the beginning.
It is right here. I'm back on that slide. If you look at your screen, you'll see the only adjustment we've made is if you are particularly interested in seeing the lower elementary lessons available for lesson ideas at this stage right now, you could log in with primary 1 at Montessori Compass. That being said, you're all in a school that has all the cycle years designated. So you could click on that curriculum lesson plans tab icon from the top and see the entire scope and sequence from infant through through age 12.
I have a different question, Anita, from Karen Zennow. Can you tell us again how to print the lessons handout that walks us through today's session?
Yes. Oops. Absolutely. Hold on 1 second. You'll want to go to MontessoriCompass.com. And then go to, if you hover on the contact link, you'll see a link for the webinar series. Go ahead and select the webinar series. And for today's webinar series, there's a, right under the description of today's session is a click here to download a handout for this session. And if you click there, you'll see it's actually a 9-page PDF. It goes through all the individual steps, and you can print right directly from this view or download it onto your desktop or simply refer to it here. Whoops. So again, that's a link that's just here on our website under the currently scheduled webinars. Right here. Okay, Tim, do you think we should go ahead and let's take one more look, I guess, and see how things are progressing? And maybe go ahead and go back to looking at some additional features.
I have one other question from Nisha Gupta. I signed into Primary 1. I don't see how these 3 kids are lower L kids. How do I see them?
Sure. So I'm in Primary 1 right now if you look at your screen. And I'm going to click on Mason Burns. He actually has, he's designated as 5th grade. In the system, under the school profile, you have a tab called Cycle Years. This is where we really, throughout the system, strive to give you flexibility and allow you to customize, especially things like terminology. We work with schools all over the world. So right here, this particular cycle year refers to, perhaps a 5th grade class, the second year in an upper elementary classroom. But you can call this whatever you would like to. Right now we have it called 5th grade. And you're right, that Mason student, if he's in lower L, he really should be either 1st or 2nd or 3rd year of lower elementary, not in upper elementary. This particular demo school had infant, primary, lower, and upper elementary, and toddler. For the purposes of today's demonstration, I converted all of the classrooms to be primary. So this is not at all representative of the way a school would be set up, because we have a 9-year-old in a primary classroom. Now, I did add additional cycle years. What that means is that this classroom, now when I go to do record keeping, I'm going to pull lessons that are tagged from PK1, the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd years of a primary classroom, also 1st, 2nd, and 3rd years of a lower elementary classroom. So for example, I'm finding the decanomial vertical presentation and building the tower, lessons that I would not typically find in a primary classroom. Because I have additional year cycles checked off for this classroom. I have 1st, 2nd, and 3rd lower L. Okay, Tim's asking to restate the password. The password is simply password. We kept it real simple with that. All lowercase, just the word password. Now for administrators and for teachers as well, if you click on the classrooms, there's a really nice view here, if you're wondering, in the Students tab, where you can see at a glance for each of your students how many planned lessons have they been included in and how many lesson ideas. And simply click there and it takes you right to it. So this looks like a really nice distribution. You guys who have been logging into Primary Classroom 1 are adding lessons from art and music and history, geography, mathematics. We can go back, and that was for Mason alone. You can see about Primary 2. William has some nice lessons added here as well, some practical life and sensorial. Wow, Raphael has 17 lesson ideas have been added. Oh no, and primary 4 still coming in distant past or distant last place, I suppose. One lesson idea. Sitting on the line. Well, that's a good lesson. Alrighty. Tim, I think maybe we should go ahead and go back to the presentation and discuss the lesson plans, although it looks like some of you have already been using the lesson plans feature. Instead of just lesson ideas, you guys are going ahead and taking things a step further and choosing a date. But what do you think, Tim? Are we ready to move on?
Let me just take a look and see what the current feedback is, because it's starting to come in all of a sudden.
Okay.
Let's see. On Montessori Compass site, there's not a contact link to hover over to print the 9-page instructions, and is not under any of the links. And I think that I think this person is confused. If you hit that link, this is Laurie. Laurie, if you hit the link, it should download it to your computer. You then open the document, and then you print it locally from the PDF file that you would have downloaded. And I apologize. She goes on and says, "I'm so sorry, I got it." So
great.
we're all right. So it sounds to me like we're ready to move on. The one thing I'm going to suggest is, why don't we take a quick break and have 5 minutes and just everyone get up and stretch your back out and, run in place or something for a moment or two. Get yourself some water, stay hydrated. And those of you who stay here, I'll just continue to chat with you for a minute or two. And Nita, the same for you.
Great.
I've been muted. You've been doing all the work. So for those of you that weren't at Montessori Congress this last week, I want to tell you that was a real watershed. The Association Montessori International, founded in 1929 by Dr. Montessori, is the largest and most well-known organization worldwide. The American Montessori Society, founded in the United States by a number of wonderful Montessori educators and people that I came to know and worked with for many years, is the second largest. And the bottom line is that historically, those two groups have not had close relationships. Over the last 4 years, things have really moved into a very different direction. And this last year, the AMI, Association Montessori International, invited AMS and the Montessori Foundation and the International Montessori Council and really any Montessori organizations, including the National Association of New Zealand, Australia, anyone who wanted to participate in coming together to create and to sponsor the conference. Speaking as an old diehard Montessori leader, it was really wonderful to see us all on stage together, collaborating together, working for a different future. And for those of you that pay attention to such things, this was a watershed experience. It was not only a wonderful conference in a beautiful city run by wonderful people, but it was the first time I've ever seen that level of spirit. It's something we should all take pride in and all look forward to the future with great confidence. Some exciting things are happening. More will be following from all of the various organizations, including the Montessori Foundation. And we'll try to keep you as informed as we can about our work. But a national trust has been set up in the United States. Similar movements are organizing in other countries step by step. I think the days of working separately are beginning to really begin to wane, and increasingly people are realizing, and this is important, that it isn't just where you get your credential, and it isn't just the national level. It's got to be from the grassroots up. Montessori is no stronger than it is in your hometown. It's no stronger than your ability to work with other Montessori schools to promote Montessori, to give parents a sense of being part of something worthy of trust and respect, and something in which they will really lend their support. So while you've been stretching and relaxing, I'm hoping you're also taking a moment to say namaste, because this has been a time of celebrating the goodness and the greatness and the spirit within each of us. So, having given you that quick reflection on the last 4 or 5 days of our lives, I think, Anita, it would be time to get started again.
Sounds great. Thank you. And yep, just want to second what you said in terms of how inspiring the Congress really was in terms of that message of unity and really overcoming any differences just for the greater good of Montessori. And just fabulous message. The whole experience was incredible. If you weren't able to make it, hopefully Tim, we're trying to figure out a way to kind of continue the conversation that was started from the Congress and really make those sessions and summaries of sessions be available to people. So I'll talk with you further about what we started there. But it's truly incredible.
So before you do it, I see another person has just asked if you could restate how to log into the demo site. I think this is someone that may have just joined in late.
Oh, it looks like they're using, I hope, well, let's see, sure. Let's back up to one place. To log into that demo site, you go to montessoricompass.com, click the login link from the top menu on the right-hand side, and then you're going to use one of the credentials listed right here on this slide on the computer right now. Hold on. Let me, whoops, there we go. So depending on the range of your last name, you would choose either primary1 at montessoricompass.com or primary2 and so on. And the password for all of these usernames is simply the word password. But I'm not sure, I'm reading in the question, Tim, that you sent me, and it says that I used my email address and the word password to log in. But you wouldn't want to use, I don't know if you're referring to your personal email address, whoever submitted this question, because that would not work. You want to use one of the email addresses listed on this screen right now, on this slide. Okay? And we're going to, what we went over right now, and though it looks like some of you jumped ahead, which is great, we went over using the tool of lesson ideas. And we're going to go ahead and discuss the lesson plan tools that you can find in the system. So you'll all have an opportunity to, if you just arrived, for example, right now, to log in and create some lesson plans and send them to record keeping and see what that's like. Okay, so you can add lesson plans to a student's lesson plans list from 4 different places in the system. Now on the handout, if you've downloaded that yet, or if you're going to download it later, we go more into when to use which approach. Of course, it's kind of just a suggested best practice. We give a lot of flexibility in the system so that you can find what works best for you. And that's what we're doing right now in this session as well, where you are getting in the system, you're seeing where you're adding a lesson idea, now you'll see where you're going to create a lesson plan. You might use all 4 different places to create lesson plans. You can use them for different purposes. You might just use one and use that same one all the time. But let's talk about the different options. One of them is from within an individual student's profile page. So you've added all these lessons to their lesson ideas, and maybe now you want to go ahead and choose a date. Maybe with your lower or upper L students, you want to go ahead and help them for time management. And they're not just going to define academic goals for the week, but maybe they want to take it a little bit more specific and say, I want to achieve this academic goal on Monday. So you can go ahead and define the academic goals for a month and then go in and say, well, let's choose what you're going to do this week. Plan the lesson, choose a date, and then give them a printout of their planned lesson so they can see what they're what they're doing on individual dates. The other option is from within the curriculum. Right within the curriculum, this is actually a great place to do planning lessons for individual or for groups, where you're looking in the maybe in history or in cosmic studies or mathematics, and you just want to plan a lesson. Every lesson in the system has a link where you can plan it or you can record it for record keeping. The suggested lessons tool is kind of an interesting tool. You can actually choose any academic category, and it will show you the last recorded lesson for each one of your students, and then it will list the next lesson in the sequence. It may or may not be useful for some educators to then know, well, what's coming next? I know what was documented from Maria previously, and then you could plan a lesson from there. The fourth way is actually, let me back up. The curriculum, you're able to create a lesson plan from the elements page as well. So we're going to look at all of this within the system in just a moment. Now you can view lesson plans from two different places. You can view the lessons you've planned from the daily dashboard, and there'll always be a little visual indicator letting you know how many lessons you have planned for the day. These lessons might have been planned last week or yesterday, but when you come into your classroom on this particular date, there will be a number indicator. You see that there's a number 1 there in bold, even though there's 2 lessons listed. Well, that's because one of them has been completed. This is dynamic, it automatically updates, so as soon as this second lesson is sent to record keeping, the number disappears. The other place to view planned lessons is right here on the Planned Lessons tab in the curriculum. And you'll always have a list of any lessons that have not yet been recorded. It has the lesson name, the classroom, an element if one was chosen, the number of participants. You can click on that lesson to see additional information. Let's go ahead and take a look at that right now. Okay, so I'm logged into the system as an administrator, and we're going to look at the tools for planning lessons. This is when you actually have a date associated with the lesson. So the first one that we mentioned was from within an individual student's profile. So I click on students, I choose a student's name, I can go to lesson ideas, and I can go ahead and plan a lesson right from here. Again, this would be if you want to go ahead and set a specific date. So let's choose plan this lesson. It opens up the lesson plan tool with this student's name already selected. I can choose a date. There's a description already here. This comes preloaded in the system. We have hundreds of descriptions and very often photos particularly for primary room or primary classrooms materials. And then you have a field here where you can put notes. These are for your eyes only. These can be specific for this lesson for this student, for Carly, something with the command cards, how she's working on those, how she's progressing, or it can be specific to the lesson. But it's really for the teacher's eyes only, optional notes here. So I'm going to hit Create Lesson Plan. Here I am now. It automatically takes me. Remember, I was in the student's profile in the lesson ideas. Here I am on the Curriculum Lesson Plans page. This is the other place to plan a lesson. I hit Plan a Lesson. I can go ahead and basically search my database right here for any lesson. Let's go ahead and do, how about history? Preparing and writing a report. Can choose an element. You can wait to select an element if you would like until you've actually sent it to record keeping. For earlier in the presentation, we mentioned how for writing, the elements serve as assessment rubrics. So to assign that ahead of time might not make sense. And in that situation, you would simply leave this blank and use it for assessment purposes when you send it to record keeping. We choose a date. You can select students for this lesson based on their skill level. So if some were already at working or at mastered, that would be reflected right here. Or by year cycles, maybe it's the students in the third cycle in my lower L that are going to be researching historical civilizations. And then I can choose if I want to put in a description again or not. Now lessons are showing up here. Again, participants, I can go ahead and click to get more information for the lesson. Let me choose, one moment, a primary room. And I can show you all of these lessons that we have in here. You can click on this and see a photograph, a description, the students who have been tagged for it, all in the planned lessons list. The other way to plan a lesson is directly, so those are two ways, there's two more, directly from within the curriculum itself. So I can go ahead and click on a category and say that we're going to be working with the red rod maze. Plan this lesson. Every lesson has a link to plan, so I can do it right from within here. There's my classroom, there's the lesson. I can choose if I want to do this now or as an assessment for later when I'm sending it to record keeping. Choose the date, all the students, and this is an option if you choose to share planned lessons with parents. And we can go ahead and say something about walking around the maze. This is a parent-friendly description. We'll go ahead and we'll just add this right here. Parents see this description if you're using activity reports or progress reports in the system, and create the lesson plan. And that can be done from the elements or the lessons page. Lessons, again, is kind of just the list of lessons and materials, and then the elements are those measurable objectives, and you can plan a lesson around that as well. In the situation that you do this from the element lesson, right here, arranges the pictures in the correct sequence to tell a story, it's basically going to just already select the associated lesson right there. And now you can choose a date. The reason you choose the date before the students appear is that the system takes this into account for you. If you're in a primary room and maybe you have some students who are enrolled 3 days a week. Well, if I choose a Tuesday, those students who are only present on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, their names would not appear here. So it's taking that into account. I'm going to choose students of a particular year cycle and create lesson plan. Now, to actually consume that information, there's two main places. Again, one of them is right here on the curriculum lesson plan. I click that icon, I click the planned lessons tab, and I can see all of the planned lessons for my school here. I'm filtered on the primary room. I can choose other classrooms. I can choose all classrooms. And I can see all the lessons that have been planned at my school. And I can click on any one of them to get additional information as to what's planned. If there were a teacher note, it would appear here as well. I can also look on that classroom page, choose a classroom, and I can see from the student level how many planned lessons they've been included. This includes one-on-one planned lessons just for Maria or group lessons. I can click on that and see exactly which ones she's been included in. I can print that if I would like to for her planned lessons. And then the other great thing is on the daily dashboard, I have a constant reminder as an educator how many planned lessons are there for today. Let me click tomorrow. I think I was adding them for Tuesday. So if I come in tomorrow, I have a number always reminding me how many planned lessons that I have. And I can click here to see any notes that I might have entered. For example, I entered some notes here, would appear right here as well. If I'm sharing them on the calendar, they appear on the calendar. And because I put a description in here, there's a little line. So if you choose to share planned lessons with parents, you don't even need to think about it again. After you've planned it and you put in a little description, it appears here. You can, with a little description right there. And only the children who are tagged for that lesson, only their parents will see it, which is a really important thing to mention. So if you choose to share and you are sharing some of the mathematic lessons and racks and tubes division lessons and so on, only the children who are included in that particular lesson, it would only populate to their parents' calendars. Now when you're ready to send those to record keeping, all you've got to do is go ahead and hit send to record keeping. If the day comes and you just don't have time, one of the beauties of a Montessori classroom is you're following the children. And maybe you had this planned, but it's not going to work out. You run out of time. You spent a lot of time, much longer than anticipated, going over the life cycle of the frog, or doing something else exciting. You can always just hit reschedule and choose another date, and it will appear on that date when you come back with the same students tagged. You could also delete the lesson and choose to do it at another time altogether, and maybe it'll be a different group of students, or you can send to record keeping. Again, it's reminding me about a student being absent. It's showing me all the last indicated levels of mastery. If all the students did participate, I can hit all students. But maybe actually some students ended up not participating, and I can simply X out their names right here. I can adjust individual skill levels if I want to, or I can adjust all of them at once. And I can add an individual note if I would like to, or not. So that's the lesson plan feature. Again, you can add them from the individual ideas page on a student's profile, from the curriculum at the lesson level or at the element level. And I did not mention yet the fourth place, which was the suggested next lesson. So if I'm here and I click curriculum, I can click suggested lessons, and I can choose any category, academic category, and it will show me the last recorded lesson in that academic category for each of my students. And then it will list the next lesson in the sequence. So now I would invite, I just want to mention too on this handout, there's, we're starting at page 4 for the lesson plan features. But invite you to go ahead and go into that MC Demo School and start doing some lesson planning. Go to the lesson plans feature right here by clicking on there and going to planned lessons, and that will appear the icon for plan a lesson, or go right into the curriculum via the lessons or the elements and plan a lesson from there. Or you can go into a student's profile and all those great lesson ideas that you guys already made, whoops, you can convert them because now you have a date in mind, and it actually shows you. So some of you have already been doing this, good for you. And it'll show you when that lesson is planned. So I'm going to go ahead and stop talking for a moment. Let me go back. If anybody has not yet logged into the system, here's the process. You're going to MontessoriCompass.com, clicking the login link from the top menu, choosing a set of credentials from this list. These are 4 different usernames, and then using the word password to log in. Tim, are there any questions yet?
No, Anita, I don't see any. I'd love to have some feedback from the participants about how it's working to participate in this webinar. with a real-time access. So looking for any feedback that people want to share.
I would love to hear that as well, being this is the first time that we're trying this. Ways that we can improve it or make it go more smoothly, if it's useful. It'd be great to hear.
Okay, now I'm getting some feedback. Melanie says, I love the real-time access. Brooke says, this has been great. The technology is seamless. Lucy says, real-time access is helpful to me. The hands-on work helps me see what I understand. And I thought that would be the case. Here we have Bodil asking, great, but how would you be able to listen to the seminar without the assistance? Bodil, I'm recording this seminar, and at the end of it, it takes me about an hour to convert the file into something that I can conveniently upload. I'm going to put it into a private area of YouTube, and I'm going to send everybody who registered for the workshop will get the email links. And as we go along, I'll keep adding the new webinar recordings to each webinar. So if someone was to sign up for the fifth one and hadn't taken any others, they'll have access to all 5 recordings. The other recordings from past webinars are also up there as well. So again, what you're in is a blend of practical how to get ready for the start of the school year so you can hit the ground running when school starts with Montessori Compass if you're using it, understanding at a deeper level than you can get just by attending the free webinars or the individual faculty webinars that Montessori Compass is happy to provide. What we're trying to do is to blend some of the theory behind all of this and Anita and Rob's practical hands-on experience as the designers and developers of the software. So again, all of this has to be understood as having different parts. Montessori Compass, from my perspective as an outsider, is both a way of containing curriculum. So it's got our scope and sequence in there. That includes the Common Core alignment that is set up in the system to automatically record what Common Core standards are being met as children are mastering specific activities. Secondly, we have a way of making those records, of being able to show that a child has been given a lesson and that you're going back and you're noticing a level of progress. I'm going to come back to that topic in a minute because there's a whole issue about how do you really know that a child knows anything and what kind of records do you keep. The third thing is this is a tool for helping you to prepare your observations. And those observations are both private ones that you do not want to share with parents and are meant only for your internal use, and those that you want to share. And they could be observations you're going to write for the whole class, as Anita showed you earlier in this session. And they're going to be notes that you might be writing about an individual child that you want, again, to either record privately for backstory reference for you and your co-teacher and your head of school and all the teachers who will come after, and the kinds of things that you might want to share with a parent. Now, you've got to keep in mind, people have been doing this for years. They've been using legal pads, they've been using notebooks, some people have been using Excel. There's no one way to do this. There's lots of tools, and some people use other online software, and we all know some of the ones that are there. MRX was the first that came along that seemed to stand, and any one of them is a tool, and they'll all do what they're supposed to do. What I appreciate about Montessori Compass when it gets to this point is that it's a much easier tool for the average teacher to learn how to use. It's much more intuitive, although as I've been watching the questions come in over the last six webinars, it's not seamless. People will say, "Where's the light bulb? I'm not sure how to log in." It's like any playing an instrument, learning a second language. Any of it takes a certain amount of practice and time to get used to it. Um, However, I find Montessori Compass is rather elegant in the way it's designed, in that it's user friendly, it's fast in comparison with most of the other tools, but that's also to acknowledge you can get jobs done with other tools too. The next thing about it, as I see it, is it's got our curriculum scope and sequence in it. Now, if you've got a scope and sequence that you like and you don't like ours, then it really doesn't matter. And Montessori Compass would be happy to let you upload any scope and sequence you want. The difference is this scope and sequence is designed to be comprehensive and to cover AMI traditions, AMS traditions, St. Nicholas traditions, and so forth. And I should add the IMC, International Montessori Council, and the Montessori Foundation traditions. There's no one size fits all. We've got more in here than any one teacher will use. However, what it's designed to do is to give you a framework that should allow you to keep meticulous records of what's going on. And while you're doing it, to have the Common Core alignment reports being prepared for you. That took us years and years of work. Those of you who have been part of large schools, like I know that we had the headmistress of a large school in Miami, the Alexander School, on the line. I'm not sure if Joyce is still on the line at this point, but I know from 50 years of knowing Alexander how long you've worked on developing your curriculum scope and sequence. At Barry, we worked on it for 25 years, and at the foundation, we've been working at it for another 20 some years. And frankly, until we really put Dr. Amos and her team on it, we still had holes that we didn't realize. So we think that there's value in that. And then finally, the scope and the Montessori Compass is a tool for communicating with parents, and it does lots of things. For example, for most of the lessons, as you'll see in successive webinars, and forgive me, I'm sounding a bit hoarse. We've all been talking nonstop for the last, well, 2 weeks in my case, and I realize I need a cup of hot tea. But what we've done is created information that's not only useful to teachers but also to parents. There are descriptions that have been added in here that are pretty darn clear for most of the lessons. There's photographs for most of the lessons. We're continuing to fill in more and more of that stuff as we go along. Eventually, there'll be movies for all of this stuff as we start filming when the children return in a few weeks. You'll find Tomorrow's Child is in there, and all kinds of movies and resources we've created. And we're going to begin webinars for parents, just like what we're doing now with you, but they'll be offered only through Montessori Compass for the people that are using that. And then finally, for those of you that care about such things, what we believe we've got, and we've now got serious collaboration from other Montessori organizations that are looking at this and are saying, holy cow, this is really significant. We've got the basis of a major research project that we're beginning. And hopefully, many of you who are listening today will choose, when you receive your invitation, to participate in it, because it will give us significant data to help to validate the efficacy of Montessori in public and private schools, in large schools and in small, and at each of the various age levels. So for me, Montessori Compass is a lot of different things. It is just a tool. It takes time to learn to use any tool, but it's a really good tool. So thanks, Anita. You did a great job.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, it's been a fabulous experience. We're incredibly fortunate to have the opportunity to really just gain insight from Tim at very crucial and pivotal moments in our development, as to what would be useful for Montessorians. So we are, feel very grateful and fortunate. Thank you.
By the way, since I was talking, the comments have just poured in, and I mean, we're hearing from person after person, Anita, saying the real time is truly valuable. People who were at our sessions the last go round are really raving about this.
That's wonderful. Great. I'm so glad to hear that. Okay. Um, well, I think we've found a new format for these. Well, you
Uh,
already talked. Yes, go
got a
on.
new one for you. New question.
Okay.
Melanie I'm not sure I'm going to pronounce this right. Melanie Thiesi? I hope I've got that right, Melanie. I'm sorry if I don't. She writes, can an administrator set up by deleting lessons or categories for their classrooms so that the early childhood teachers are not overwhelmed by the elementary lessons being displayed?
Sure. Let's go ahead and explain that one. You may have been logged in as primary one teacher because in the demo site, we did add those additional cycle years in a primary one classroom. Let me see here. As a request from an attendee to be able to see that curriculum. In a normal situation, you would only have these first 3 cycle years checked off for the classroom. In fact, that's how it is for the other classrooms in here. Therefore, a teacher attached to this classroom would not see any of the lower elementary lessons. So there's no need for you to edit the curriculum in that situation. You only tag what cycle years you want to have appear for the classroom. So that's as easy as editing right here. And again, that primary one is a bit of an anomaly to have primary and lower L in one classroom, and only for demonstration purposes. But you bring up a good point. Both you and Tim are touching on this concept of modifying the curriculum. And that's the last part of today's session that we'll be going through, and you have a hands-on opportunity to do that. Prior to doing that, I wanted to just touch a little bit more about the Common Core alignment in the system, because I think it is important to consider as you're deciding what changes you're going to make to the existing scope and sequence. So the way that the alignment is organized in the system is we actually include the Common Core state standards just basically word for word. However, they, on the standards page, I'll show you in the system where you'll see it. It's basically what's published on the Common Core state standards are included in the system. And they're defined exactly as you would find them, so people could search by code if they need to, or just to read through them. And you can click on any individual standard and see all of the elements in the system, all the elements from the Montessori scope and sequence that address that standard. So in the situation on the screen in front of you, the standard is a first grade geometry standard. And it's referring to the ability to partition circles and rectangles into 2 and 4 equal shares, describing those shares using the words halves, fourths, and quarters. Understand, for these examples, decomposing into more equal shares, create smaller shares, and so on. So from the Montessori scope and sequence, there is how many? 7 defined elements that have been identified as addressing this particular standard. So when a Montessori educator's in the classroom and they go ahead and record for a student that their student has worked with the fraction circles and symbols, behind the scenes, the alignment takes place and this standard is listed in the student's profile as the fact that there's been a lesson documented for them that address that standard. And so we spoke a bit as well in terms of the elements also serving as assessment rubrics. And in those situations, the individual assessment rubrics align to specific Common Core standards. And based on how you're assessing a student's piece of writing, for example, they may be meeting, a lower elementary student might be meeting a 4th or a 5th grade standard. We really took into account that we weren't going to try to narrow a lower elementary student and only give you access to the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade standards, because they're Montessori students, for one thing. And we found over and over again that the students were meeting standards above their grade levels just in the traditional Montessori scope and sequence. So for example, we go up through 8th grade in the Common Core because of the regular introduction of polynomials in an upper elementary classroom. That's not addressed in traditional education, or at least not in the Common Core, until 8th grade. So it was out of necessity. Now, you can customize the curriculum at any one of the levels. You can customize, you can add your own standards. As Tim mentioned, we do work with a lot of schools around the world, and we're working to coordinate efforts in various countries to get the national standards for their countries loaded and the alignments made. You can modify the level at the lesson level. You can modify the name, the description, the cycle year for which the lesson would appear. You can change the photograph. You can change the sequence. I'll show you in the system in a moment, but all of that is demonstrated on this slide right here. You can go ahead, and this is just an example of changing a standard. You can add a standard. You can, I don't know if you'd want to modify the Common Core state standards. They really are exactly in the Common Core state standard language and so on. This is using the standards tool to create a thematic unit. And we go into that further on our site as well, which can be of interest to lower elementary and upper elementary classrooms. So before I go ahead and tell you how to log into the system to start editing curriculum, I'm going to go ahead and show you in the demo school, the Concord Montessori demo school, what we've just been talking about. So let me walk you through the steps. You can click on the curriculum icon, and we have multiple options. One of them is that perhaps you would rather have Cosmic Studies called a different name. Maybe you call it something different. Or maybe there's a category listed that's missing from here. Maybe you want to add a special language category or a different unit of curriculum. You would just go right up here to this Edit Category link, and you can add a new category right there. And it would be, once you create that category, it's available to you to add lessons. So we could say foreign language, for example. And what I see here are, this is optional, curriculum identifier, just to go ahead and give it its own unique shorthand if you'd like to. These are descriptions for year cycles. So I have the ability to write a unique description of this academic category for every year cycle. That description shows up on progress reports. So as a parent, when I get my progress report, I can learn about how foreign language is taught in the Montessori classroom and how is my toddler learning it specifically. And that description very well may be different from how a 2nd grader is learning. So we give you the ability to put in different descriptions. And if there are, again, you want to change the name of a category, or if there's something you don't use, you can archive the entire thing. The thing that I would caution about with archiving is that once you archive something, it doesn't actually delete. You could restore it at any time. However, if you're interested in the Common Core state standards alignment that's taking place behind the scenes, those links break. The alignment links are not restored when you go to restore. So you want to give some thought into how you archive, and you might want to archive instead at the subcategory or at the lesson level. And what I mean by that is if you choose, click on an academic category. Let's choose mathematics. I can archive a subcategory. I can edit the title. I can add an additional lesson. All of this is very straightforward. Let's go to linear counting. If one of these lessons I don't like, I can archive it. I can change. Maybe I don't, I just call it the short bead stare at my school. I can simply do this and save it. At the lesson level, I can change the description, the parent-friendly description. I can add whatever I want to. This box is a great place to put if there's nuances about how you would like for this lesson to be presented or how you typically present it. This is for the teacher's eyes only. It follows this lesson in the curriculum, but no one else sees it except for administrators and teachers when they look at this lesson. This is where you designate what year cycles you would want the lesson to appear. And you can add a new photo, your own photo, of, or you can actually add a link to a video. Parents will have access to the photos, the video, and the description. And you can also change the sequence of lessons right here. So I can open that and I can see the photograph that comes with this. We have lovely photographs thanks to the foundation, as well as lovely descriptions. Now, these are the lessons. For the elements, we actually received just recently a request about editing the approach that we use for the sandpaper letters. So let me show you that example. Here I am in element. So instead of just looking at material names, I'm looking at the measurable objectives that have been defined. And here, for sandpaper letters, we actually list them. This is actually listed, Tim, it might look familiar, in terms of the suggested sequence that was given for How to Raise an Amazing Child from the Foundation, from Tim Selden. And if you do this differently at your school, this would be a simple matter of clicking edit and then putting in the letters that you teach and the sequence in which you teach them. I would really recommend that you edit that instead of archiving it and deleting it altogether, removing it. The reason is, as you can see, these are aligned with standards. I can click on any element to see which standard it has been aligned to. And if I were to archive that and then restore it or add a different one, the alignment wouldn't be there. It's easy enough, I suppose, but you would have to already know what the standards are and everything. But you simply hit add a standard and then do a search. You can use the code, you can use a word, and all of the standards are listed here. Then the standards were really the last tab if you wanted to modify any of the standards from this view. We have preloaded, again, I think I mentioned up through 8th grade in some places, some of the strands. But it's, let's see here. If you were to edit it, it's the same kind of a process where you can archive, you can edit, or you can add a new standard. So what I'm going to invite you to do is to log into the MC demo system and click on the lessons tab and choose a lesson. And we can reset all of this at any time. So that's what, not this particular one, sorry, the Concord Montessori, but when you go over here into this demo school, and see how easy it is. Change the sequence around, change a name, you can change an element, you can define a new element, and just see how that kind of works. The issue is, though, is you can see right here, I'm logged in as curriculum editor. So teachers are not able to make edits to the curriculum at this time. We have received a lot of feature requests for this particular permission to be changed, and we are taking it into account. The reason why we don't do that at this time is because this is centralized. Any change that's made to this curriculum affects every classroom in the school. So they shouldn't be made lightly. If you delete a lesson that another classroom uses, they might not be happy about it, or if you change it, or it's mostly in the issue of removing lessons rather than adding lessons. It's something that you would want to talk about as a school and agree upon. What many schools do is that leading up to the first day of school, they give all the teachers administrator level permissions so that everyone's contributing to make the curriculum look to what really reflects your school's goals academically. And then everyone is switched back to teachers, because now it's just easier for you. You're seeing what, as a teacher, if you're logged in, you see what's specific for your classroom. As an administrator, you see everything. And an example of that is if I'm logged in as an administrator, I'm going to see all of the classrooms. Every time I plan a lesson, every time I do something, I need to make sure I'm in the right classroom. As a teacher, it just takes me right into my classroom. I see a question. Okay, great. Yes, so someone asked, how does a Common Core, how does that look in a child's records? And it's a great question. I'll click on a student here. I'll look at their records. We actually have 4 different displays for viewing a student's records. You can look at it from the straightforward category display. You can look at it from a timeline view. Here we see all the lessons that have been documented in this month, and we can see their level of mastery. We can see any notes we've entered. Here you can view by highest level. So we have a filter. In this month, what lessons are working? It looks like in this month, Maria has mastered a lot of lessons. And then we have that standards view. And the standards view shows all of the standards in the system, and it shows the students' progression through them. We're actually going to be rearranging this a little bit. We're having, in the midst of a lot of conversations about some of the best ways to present these data. As you can imagine, it's kind of challenging. We're collecting a lot of data. How to present that in the most user-friendly way. And here, for example, this student has, it's a kindergarten student, and yet she has 5 of the 11 standards in the 2nd grade one. So I can click on this and I can see understanding place value is a strand in the Common Core state standards. And my student in kindergarten has 5 of those 6 standards recorded for her. So I can look and see how she's doing. In one of these, the very first one, the student, the standard is defined as understands that the 3 digits of a 3-digit number represents amounts of hundreds, tens, and ones. So I see that Maria has 7 of the 13 Montessori scope and sequence elements that have been aligned to this recorded for her. If I click on that, I can see the individual ones and see what has been noted, her noted level of mastery on these particular elements. So this is the view that you can have for each one of your students in relation to the Common Core state standards. Did you see that say there is a way to show children what their work plan looks like? Right, that is the lesson ideas. Let me see, let me go ahead and choose a different student right now, and a lower elementary student, and go to her lesson ideas list. And this can be compiled in concert with the student. If you go to the records page and you add lessons to the lesson ideas list by turning on the light bulb, this allows you to generate just a defined list of academic goals without specific dates attached to them. And you can print this, you can look at this, and then later when you want to send it to record keeping, you can. Or if you want to go ahead and generate a work plan with specific dates, you can do that. You can see right here, one of these lessons has been given an actual date, and now it's going to be on that student's planned lessons page as well. Would parents have direct access to Compass, at least to certain aspects of it, is another question that's coming in. Yeah, absolutely. We put a lot of care and thought and effort into creating a parent portal that parents can log into with their unique username and password and access information that you have chosen to share with them. And I'd like to emphasize that last part. They will not see, they don't even know that they have an account unless you share that part with them, but they will not see information that you don't directly choose to share, whether it be a scheduled lesson or an activity report or a progress report or a calendar event or a message or a photo. You get to choose what it is you'd like to share, and they log in and they have access to that. The only thing they have access to without you expressly giving them permission is that fabulous publication from the Montessori Foundation, Tomorrow's Child. All parents with Montessori Compass accounts have access to a digital subscription of Tomorrow's Child right there via their Montessori Compass account. In lesson planning, is there a tech that adds in time required for each lesson and adds it up so we don't overbook lesson plans? No, we do not have a feature for adding up the time required for a lesson so you don't overbook lesson plans. What we do though is give you a visual indicator of the number of lessons planned each day. And if you have many lessons planned today and you decide that you're not going to be able to get through all of those, you may very well want to reschedule some of them. You can do that right here on the dashboard, or you can do that from the planned lessons page, which shows you right here all of the lesson plans for your classroom. You can choose the entire school, but you could see how many you have on a certain date, and you may want to choose to edit and choose a different date if it's looking as though you have way too many lessons planned on a specific date. But the system doesn't do that automatically. I think that would require an input on the user to estimate how much time and so on. You can put that on a note if you would like to. Let me see if I can remember where we entered a note previously. Right here, I think in the red rods, you have an option to enter a teacher note. We didn't do it here either. And that could put an estimate of the amount of time it might take to complete a lesson, and that would appear. So let's say allow 30 to 45 minutes. This is only for you to see. It follows the lesson. And now when I click on that, I would see a time there. And if you want to think through that process as you plan the lesson and put a time there, then that might be helpful for you in, if you're looking at this overall view to kind of manage the time and think about whether you need to move a lesson or not. Okay, so let's quickly, we don't have a lot of time remaining actually. I can give you the access so that you can do this on your own right here, to go in there and see what it's like to edit the curriculum, because this is a concern that many users have. They want to, that they're happy thrilled to have access to this incredibly robust, comprehensive scope and sequence, but maybe it's missing, a couple lessons you really want, or it's worded differently, or has something that you'd never use. So you're going to log into, you're going to go to MontessoriCompass.com and click the login link and log in with this set of credentials right here. That's edit@MontessoriCompass.com. So everyone in this situation is using the same username and the word password as your password, all lowercase. I divided this up, but it was really just for your ease, so that when you go to look at your edits, if everybody's editing the same category, it might be a little bit challenging, or you might overstep each other's edits. So I suggested that if your last name ends between A and D, you can make edits within mathematics, and E and L, edits within language arts, and so on. But that's really, I'll kind of leave that up to you. But I would encourage you to do that and just check it out and see and feel comfortable. This is kind of we call it a sandbox in tech, in terms of you can't break it. So go ahead and check it out.
Yeah, we should just remind everyone that what you're doing today is in a demo account. In your own account, what you can do is whoever's been given administrative control can do the same thing, and it really counts and allows you to add or reword or revise things that you've got. And our suggestion, by the way, is don't pull anything out unless you're absolutely determined, because you don't want to screw up the Common Core alignment. In other words, you can reword it if you want, but that particular lesson is linked to various national standards, and it allows us for research purposes to work best if you really don't change it. We can easily add tags if you use different language than we do. We've tried to, every one of these records, which is what you're looking at, can have tags that you don't necessarily see, that allow, when they search for it, to bring up that particular lesson. I'm explaining this in a very poor manner. Anita, why don't you explain what I'm trying to say?
No, and I appreciate you saying this, Tim. I don't think I emphasized that enough at the end in particular, that in your own account, you would really want to take care before you start archiving, essentially removing lessons from your system, because even if you go to restore them at a later date, the alignment with the Common Core is broken and it's not restored. It would have to be rebuilt for those specific lessons. And this is a view here of an element where reading and understanding a simple bar graph is an element that's associated with the lesson of comparing values, and it shows you the variety of standards that are addressed. So it's incredibly comprehensive. So if you undo this and then go, oh, wait, what were the standards that were met for being addressed, if that part's important to you, then going through all of the Common Core national standards and trying to determine would be a Herculean effort. So we don't recommend that. If you want to rename this so it's something else, as Tim said, you can simply hit edit and put in any terminology that you might want to term. That can be done at the lesson level or at the I'm looking at that, at the lesson level or at the element level. And then we have these great search boxes. So you can, there's nothing in the map that I thought I was in sensorial. These great search boxes that you could go ahead, and as long as it's in the title name or the element somewhere, it will pull up what you're looking for. So if I type in the word brown, I see about the, this is bringing up something from grammar functions of words, displaying an awareness of words that describe things through a game involving objects like give me the pink pig or move the brown cow, and also the visual discrimination element with the brown color tablets. Let's see here. If I go to the lessons, so that's the wording of the elements that are searched, and I search on the word brown, it's going to bring up the brown stare. If I want to change that to broad stare, I would just select that, and I can click edit and change the name, change the description if I'd like to. None of these changes are going to affect the elements that have been defined for this lesson and their connection to the Common Core state standards. Okay. Any other questions that have come up? I think this sort of wraps up the main topics we were covering in the scope of this webinar.
I think so too. I do want to say a couple of things before we sign off. One of the biggest things that I want to accomplish in the next 4 webinars and in others that I'm going to organize that are separate from this is to really try to help you as teachers or you as school administrators think about how do you help teachers to go to the practical steps. For example, when do you use something like Montessori Compass? Do you use it the night before? Do you use it at the beginning of the school year? Do you do it on the fly? If so, what kind of device are you using? Is it sitting on your right? Is it sitting on your left? Is it sitting on your lap? Is it an iPhone? Is it an iPad? All the questions that seem silly, but they're anything but silly. A general rule of thumb is going to be there is no one right answer. You want to honor the traditions that you've learned that work for you. You know that you want to follow the child. You don't want to do anything that interferes with your children's learning or ability to concentrate, stay focused. You know the old rule, don't move your mouth when you're moving your hands. Don't do anything that distracts the child from what you're trying to draw her attention to, especially with the youngest children, but really every age. Even teenagers need to be captivated and drawn into the lesson. So that suggests to me that we're probably not going to be sitting there texting in the middle of a conversation with children any more than I would do that if you and I were sitting down and having a conversation at lunch. We want to be present in the moment. So when we speak next time, among the other topics we'll talk about, I'd like to talk about how you're using it or how you imagine you're going to use it. We're anxious as the year gets going and we continue these webinars for people to share the experience they're finding that works. I'll be doing videos of our teachers here at our lab school in Sarasota, how they're using it, and we'll interview them and have them talk to you on screen about what they notice works and doesn't work. But I think you're going to find there will not be one answer. The other piece that I want to get to next week, and I want you to be thinking about, excuse me, I say next week. We're doing 2 a week at this point. On Thursday is the next one. Same time, same place. And by the way, those of you who are in Asia and are online at midnight, God bless you. You're wonderful. You've hung in there, and I see that, and I really appreciate it. So, what we'll be talking about as well is how do you really know that a child knows something, and what's the best way to record it? To use the standard three angle scheme that's been used in Montessori for many, many decades. I presented it, he's working towards it, he's mastered it. Or does the word mastered really captures the reality that you might see? All of those are questions that won't have any one answer, but rather will be something where different people will conclude that they want to try something that they think is best. What we're trying to do is not give you a one size fits all answer. We are trying to get you to think deeply and to come up with solutions that you feel are really helping you to improve your practice in your classroom or in your school. I want to remind you that we are getting ready to launch a national research project that will be multi-year. We are looking for people who are investigators who wish to participate, not only by having their school opt in to have your data anonymously be part of the data pool that we're going to be studying, but if you'd like to be part of the research committee, and yes, Joyce McGee, I am speaking to you and others who are online. We're really looking to assemble a team from many different parts of the Montessori community who are professional researchers who are interested in different aspects of what we can learn from this kind of data. Um, we hope to have an annual report beginning in June or so. And we have again invited AMS and AMI as the first two external partner organizations to the Montessori Foundations to collaborate institutionally. And we're inviting you if you feel that you would like to be considered for the research team as well, my friends who are on this line now. So the bottom line is I hope you will speak to your head of school and you'll have your school opt in when Rob and Anita send out the formal invitation, or I guess it'll probably come from us since the Research Institute is at the foundation. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we'd like to have you opt in. You don't have to, but we assure you your children's information will be confidential and will be protected, but it will be invaluable to the whole of Montessori to have this information compiled and analyzed. So the next webinar is coming up on Thursday, and I see that while I've been speaking, Anita has done two things. She's brought up on screen right now, she's bringing up the list of currently scheduled webinars, which is on the Montessori Compass Contact Us link on their website. And the next one is 1 o'clock on Thursday. You do need to sign up for it if you haven't done so already. And I noticed that we have far more people who signed up for this particular webinar than who have currently signed up for the next one. This link was only good for this particular webinar. Again, I will send out an invitation for that next webinar in the email that I'm about to send you. And you should have received a broadcast email from the Montessori Foundation over the last few days. I've got them set up automatically, so every 2 or 3 days, a new email is going out. And if you're not deleting them, you can always go back, find the correct link, and very quickly sign up for each of the 5 webinars if you're interested. And then finally, you don't have to actually log into the webinar to take advantage of it. If you have registered, you will get the recording of the webinar. and you'll be able to listen to that. And we're happy to have you share it with anyone on your staff or anyone that you know who would like to be part of this experience. We're trying to disseminate as much information as we can, as quickly as we can, because from our perspective, it isn't simply about Montessori Compass versus some other software. Our goal here is to come up with the very best solutions we can. We feel very strongly Montessori Compass is extraordinarily strong. Um, but the bottom line is what we really feel is that it's time for Montessori schools around the world to begin keeping very careful records of what is happening in our classroom and what our children are actually doing in terms of real learning that can be seen and measured. So that's it for me. Anita, anything you'd like to say in conclusion?
Just two things. One, the register now button for next week will be up within a couple of minutes of this of the session ending. So you will have two options for signing up. Second, just to remind everyone, or those of you who may have entered the meeting late, we do have a link right here to download a handout that goes over the step-by-step kind of process for doing all the things we discussed today. It also goes into a little bit about when you might want to use a particular approach for adding a lesson idea. So that might be a useful handout. And then lastly, as Tim was discussing the research project, I was just simply drawing attention to the blog article on our website that discusses this exciting new initiative.
Yeah, we'll be making a formal announcement of it from the foundation very soon. Um, I have another very important question that's been asked by Fatima Odoyan. I apologize, Fatima. Um, she's asking whether or not we're going to provide a copy of the scope and sequence so that other people can match it up with their national curriculum. Fatima, I'm sorry, we're not going to do that. The curriculum is something you can purchase through the foundation. It's very expensive. The iteration that you're going to find inside of Montessori Compass is yet the labor of many more people, as you can see on the screen right now. We are more than willing to look at uploading your curriculum, your national curriculum, into Montessori Compass in the same place for your school where the U.S. Common Core Standards is, and we're more than happy for you to do the alignment. And if you're interested in doing that for all the schools in your country, I suspect if you approach Rob and Anita, they'll be more than pleased to work with you on that. They may not be able to do it for you, but they'll be very happy and very anxious to reward you for accomplishing that piece of work if you're able to do it. But we won't be. We do have it online where you can see it, but it's not organized so that you can just download it. And I hope you can appreciate it. It's just so many years worth of work. Um, and we have various other questions that people are asking, and it's getting later. So here's what I promise. If you have a question that you've asked and we have not answered it because it's getting late and we promised we'd stop after 2 hours, promise you we'll get to these in the Thursday session. We'll start off with that. So thank you everyone for all your great questions and your feedback and your participation and hanging in there with us for so long each of these sessions. This is Tim Selden, president of the Montessori Foundation, and Dr. Anita Amos from Montessori Compass. And I'm going to say good night to all of you. And I hope that we see you again on Thursday.
Yep. Good night.
Recording will be coming soon.